Hello, it's Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you for your support, thank you for your likes, and thank you for subscribing to this channel and supporting this channel. Today, I want to introduce you to an extraordinary man. His name is Omar Ibn Said, and he is a man to know. First of all, look at this man. This is an authentic man from Senegal. And even now, he's an old man. Clearly, this picture was taken when he was an old man. And to me, he is very handsome. This is a very good-looking man to me. He wrote of his experience as an enslaved man. Nobody taught him how to write. He knew how to write when he came here, which dispels the lie that the enslaved people were ignorant and didn't have a writing system. He knew how to write, and he wrote his autobiography. Unfortunately, this man died before freedom came, but somehow the truth comes to the light, and he has made himself known. Omar Ibn Said was born in 1770 and died in 1864. He was a full Muslim scholar from Senegal in West Africa. He was enslaved and transported to the United States in 1807. Remaining enslaved for the remainder of his life, he wrote a series of Arabic language works on history and theology, including a short autobiography. He was born into a wealthy family in what would in a few years become the state of Torah, which would become an Islamic theocratic state located along the middle Senegal River in West Africa. He was an Islamic scholar and a Fula, that was his tribe, who spent 25 years of his life studying with prominent Muslim scholars, learning a range of subjects including mathematics, astronomy, business, and theology. Now, he was from a wealthy family, but he was still captured and sent into slavery because that slave business in West Africa in those days was dog eat dog. So they were capturing each other and selling each other and fighting each other, but the British, the Europeans were in the background egging this on. In 1807, he was captured during a military conflict, enslaved, and taken across the Atlantic Ocean to the United States. He escaped from a cruel master in Charleston, South Carolina, and journeyed to Fayetteville, North Carolina. There, he was recaptured, sent to jail, and later sold to James Owen, whom Omar Ibn Said described as being gracious towards him. The Owen family was impressed by Ibn Said's education, and they provided him with an English translation of the Quran. He also received an Arabic translation of the Bible with the help of Francis Scott Key, author of the Star-Spangled Banner. Whew. Ibn Said was offered multiple opportunities to return to Africa, but he chose to remain in the United States, citing his uncertainty that his family and his people were still intact. He lived into his mid-90s and was still enslaved at the time of his death in 1864. He was buried in Bladen County, North Carolina. Omar Ibn Said was also known as Uncle Moreau and Prince Omar. Okay. The significance of this is that a number of lies are dispelled by this man's life. Number one, he was not enslaved in Africa because he was a criminal. He was from a wealthy family, but they were fighting each other. This was the conquest of the Europeans coming to the new world, building up the new world, and they needed workers and they needed people who knew what they were doing. So the first thing is that he was not enslaved in Africa because he had committed a crime. He was captured, as many of them were. Number two, they were saying that they didn't have a religion, that they had primitive religions. This man was a Muslim. He was a Muslim scholar. He knew how to write in the Arabic language. So that's another lie. And the third lie was that they were just barbaric. These people were subhuman. This man was very well educated and knowledgeable. And this man named James Owen was impressed with his knowledge and offered to send him back to Africa. But he wisely, I guess, chose not to go back because he knew what it was like over there. It's a good chance that he would have been captured again and put on another slave ship. So I guess he said, I'm just going to let well enough alone. But apparently he had a tolerable life in America where he took his chances here as opposed to going back to Africa. His autobiography was recently discovered, and in it he wrote about his experience of being captured and enslaved. He wrote an English version of his autobiography and an Arabic version because he wanted his Arab brothers to know what it was like from that standpoint. He wrote an English version for the enslavers. He wanted them to know what being enslaved was like from a black man's point of view, from an enslaved person's point of view. I thought that was very clever. They like to say that he converted to Christianity, but based on what I've read, he didn't. He did like a lot of black people do. You go along to get along. If you want to believe I converted to Christianity, okay, you believe that. But the fact that he wrote a version of his autobiography in Arabic so Muslims would understand what had happened to him suggests that he didn't really convert to Christianity at all. He just went along for the safety of going along. Omar Ibn Said authored 14 manuscripts in Arabic. The best known of these is his autobiographical essay, The Life of Omar Ibn Said, called Mora, a Fulani slave in Fayetteville, North Carolina, owned by Governor Owen, written in 1831. It describes some of the events of his life and includes reflections on his steadfast adherence to Islam and his openness towards other God-fearing people. On the surface, the document may appear to be tolerant towards slavery. However, Said begins with, only God has sovereignty over human beings. So that pretty much lets you know what he thinks about Islam. He's still saying only God has sovereignty over human beings, and that comes from the Quran. I haven't read it yet, but I intend to read it. My sister-in-law told me about this, so I intend to read it, and when I read it, I will come back and do a video about it, telling you what he said in his autobiography, because they didn't all have the same experience. Clearly, some of them had a better situation in slavery than others. But it does dispel the lie that they didn't have a religion. He was Muslim. That they didn't have a written language system. He was writing in Arabic. And that they were not criminals or just, narrow do-gooders in Africa and ended up in slavery. And a number of them ended up in slavery with his own same background, because they were just out there fighting and capturing people and selling people, anybody that they could get their hands on. That was why it was so brutal and so inhumane. But anyway, this is Omar Ibn Said, who was captured in Senegal and enslaved for the remainder of his life. But he made the most of it by learning and writing, and now we get the message that he passed on. They keep lying, saying those enslaved people couldn't read and write, But ever so often, they pull up a script that one of them wrote. And this is one of them. So anyway, y'all, let me know what you think about this video. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video. And as always, have a great day.